what if the real secret to thriving in any organization isn't just about, like, how hard you work or even how brilliant your strategy is?
Okay, intriguing start. What if it's not?
What if it's something far more interesting? Understanding how to subtly build your own core group of loyal allies. Or, as our source kind of provocatively puts it, your own faction or cult within the company.
That's certainly a captivating way to frame it, isn't it? But yeah, beneath that provocative term, it's really about recognizing the deep, often unseen drivers of influence.
Exactly. Influence, connection, success, all that stuff that happens off the org chart sometimes.
In any professional environment.
Absolutely.
We'll explore how to identify these things, how they work, and what they mean for you.
That's right. This deep dive should hopefully illuminate those hidden currents and help you navigate them with, well, greater awareness and maybe more intentionality.
Sounds good. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's start with a really foundational concept, one that resonates deeply when you think about leadership and its impact. The body reflects the head.
Yes, that phrase.
It sounds like a simple metaphor, right? But our source really drives home that an organization, or even just a single department within a bigger company, is often a direct mirror of its leader.
It's really not just a poetic idea. It has profound, tangible implications for how the whole environment operates.
Yeah, tell us more about that. What does it mean in practice?
Well, if you think of the leader as the head, they effectively own and direct all the different organs, the teams, the functions that make up the organizational body.
Okay, makes sense.
So this means they bear the ultimate responsibility for all its actions, the wins, but also the missteps. Their influence is just pervasive. It filters down through every single layer. But the leader's personal style, their deeply held values, what they actually believe in, their tolerance for risk, how they like to communicate.
Even the unspoken stuff.
Especially the unspoken stuff. Their expectations, the things they signal are important just by paying attention to them. All of these elements just soak into the very fabric of the team or the company.
Shaping the norms, the feeling of the place.
Exactly. Shaping the unspoken rules, the overall psychological environment that everyone operates in. They set the tone, whether they consciously intend to or not.
And our source gives a really powerful, though kind of infamous, case study for this, the Wells Fargo scandal.
Oh yeah, that was huge.
Yeah, most of us remember the headlines, right? John Stump, the CEO at the time, was actually quite well liked, apparently.
He had a decent reputation, guided them through the recession.
Exactly. A steady hand, earned a lot of goodwill internally and externally. But then the scandal broke about employees creating millions of unauthorized accounts, fake accounts even, duping customers.
Yeah, it was bad. The public outrage was immense.
And the perception just solidified almost instantly. He led a colony of dupes. That's the phrase the source uses. The company's image just tanked.
Devastating hit. And that perception, the source tells us, is precisely why Stump ultimately had to resign, even despite his popularity, despite guiding the company through tough times before that.
Right, because the thinking was, what?
Well, the logic was pretty clear, wasn't it? If fraud was that widespread, happening across so many branches, so many departments all over the country,
yeah,
the unavoidable conclusion for regulators, the public, even their own shareholders, was that leadership had to be either, directly complicit
or just completely clueless.
Or completely out of touch, yeah. Well, wholly unaware of what their own staff was doing day to day. The source points out, generally speaking, employees tend to do what their leaders want, follow instructions, whether they're explicit or kind of implicit.
So for Wells Fargo to even begin to repair that damage.
Exactly. To repair their image, signal a real shift in strategy, in ethical conduct. A change at the very top became an absolute necessity.
His departure wasn't just about accountability then.
No, it was more than that. It was a powerful, very public demonstration of that body reflects the head principle in the starkest way possible. The leader, the symbolic head, is held responsible for the pervasive behavior of the whole body.
A required symbolic sacrifice, maybe?
You can definitely see it that way, to show they were serious about changing.
It's fascinating how this concept, body reflects the head. It goes beyond just huge scandals. It seeps into even the seemingly trivial bits of workplace life.
Oh, absolutely.
This whole idea and the culture it creates, it shows up in really visible ways, like even in something as simple as how people dress.
The dress code, yeah.
Yeah.
Or the lack thereof sometimes.
Right. Our source shares this really great observation about A company with a diverse setup, warehouses, storefronts, big corporate offices, all sorts of environments.
Okay.
And when managers from these really different areas would get together for meetings or conferences, their dress patterns were distinctly different, almost stereotypically so.
But predictable, maybe.
Totally predictable and perfectly aligned with what they'd wear in their normal everyday work setting.
And the key thing here, the source emphasizes, is understanding why they're different. It's not random.
Right, so the source mentions warehouse managers often in, like, company t-shirts and jeans.
Practical stuff.
Yeah. HR folks maybe in high heels, business casual.
Right.
And IT staff maybe playing into the stereotype a bit. In shirts, but definitely no ties, and maybe no cream-colored shirts.
Avoiding the coffee spills, perhaps.
Could be. But the core point isn't just personal preference. These generalizations reflect the deep-seated cultures of their specific job requirements, the environments they work in, day out.
People dress to suit their roles, right? The demands of their professional identity, the unspoken rules of their immediate team.
It's not about pay or intelligence or even just individual style.
No, it's a powerful, non-verbal signal of how deeply rooted these cultural norms are, influenced by the specific needs, the daily realities, the subtle expectations within their own departments. It's like a visual shorthand for where you belong.
And this cultural observation, it goes even deeper, doesn't it? It reveals itself in the really subtle cues that shape our daily experience.
The little things, yeah.
The source shares this personal anecdote. Two departments right next door to each other. In one, there's this real sense of community, like a shared coffee ritual every morning, actual smiles, a relaxed vibe. The source calls it a small coven feel, which is interesting. And get this, even the boss pitches in, cleans the coffee maker.
Leading by example, fostering that camaraderie.
Exactly. But then, literally next door, the contrast is stark. The person telling the story sat next to a colleague for a full year and never even learned her name.
Wow. A whole year.
Yeah, and people from that second, more tense department would actually sneak over to the first one.
To escape.
Pretty much. Just to chat, ease the tension. They'd pretend they were getting coffee, just to get away from the vibe in their own space.
That anecdote just paints such a vivid picture, doesn't it? Of the picture the boss has painted in each case, whether they meant to or not.
Totally. Those daily interactions, or the lack of them in the second department, they actively create these distinct departmental cultures.
The boss's actions, whether it's, cleaning the coffee pot and encouraging people to connect, or just allowing this isolated, maybe even tense environment to exist, it profoundly sets the tone.
And this is so crucial for you, our listener, to notice, right? Because the source makes this great point. Someone is going to do the same for you soon.
Meaning?
Meaning your own behavior, whether you're a leader or just a team member, the environment you create, consciously or unconsciously, it shapes how others see your team, your space, your leadership style.
Understanding that dynamic is absolutely key if you want to intentionally build the kind of supportive, productive, maybe even enjoyable environment you want to work in and be known for.
It really underscores that ripple effect of leadership, even in the smallest daily thing.
Absolutely. Profound ripple effect.
That's a really powerful point about being intentional. So, okay, we've seen how much a leader shapes their surroundings. Let's flip the script a bit now.
Right.
How can you, listening now, actively shape your own influence within an organization, maybe regardless of your formal title?
Building your own power base.
Yeah. Our source introduces this idea of sourcing cult members, again, deliberately provocative term.
Definitely gets your attention.
But what it really means is building your faction, or maybe just your core group of champions, your loyal allies.
Right. It's not some sneaky HR thing.
No. It's positioned as a primary resource for your own success. A way to cultivate the kind of loyalty that can really, propel you forward.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really interesting, because the source actually describes this as an art.
An art? How so?
It's about recognizing and then subtly, ethically, hopefully influencing the social forces around you, steering specific norms maybe into becoming standard practice within your sphere of influence.
So it's not manipulation in a bad way.
Not necessarily. Think of it more as the art of inspiring commitment, creating a shared purpose among a select group. The goal, according to the source, is to create loyalties that can become valuable engines of innovation.
Engines of innovation, that sounds pretty good.
Especially in complex, fast-moving environments, and this expansion of your, let's call it your inner circle or your network of champions.
Yeah.
It has to be an active, ongoing process.
You have to work at it.
You do. Even if the grand agenda, your long-term vision or ambition isn't totally clear to everyone in your network.
So they don't need to know the whole plan.
Not always. Their trust in you and their specific roles within your growing network, that guides their participation.
Yeah.
But the underlying ambition, the direction, that's yours to nurture. It's about building that core group who will champion your ideas, back your initiatives, advocate for you.
Even if they don't see the entire chessboard.
Precisely. Even if they don't see every single strategic move you're planning down the line.
And to really hammer home this idea of building deep, lasting connections, our source uses this really vivid analogy. The beautiful green tree.
The tree analogy, I like this one.
Yeah, it's good, right? You look at this tree, you see its lushness, its vibrant beauty, maybe the shade it offers, it's captivating.
You see the surface appeal.
Exactly. But then the source pivots. It asks us to think about the struggles in the history of the tree.
Right. How did it get that way?
Yeah. How did it survive like wildfires? Or how did it push its roots deep enough to get through long droughts? Or maybe it narrowly avoided being cut down for a new road.
The hidden history, the resilience.
The visible beauty, the immediate appeal, that's only part of the story.
And this analogy is just incredibly powerful when you apply it to human connections in a workplace.
How so?
Well, the visible success, those lush green leaves, representing your immediate wins, your perceived influence, your reputation right now.
Okay.
That depends entirely on years of successful cultivation, which means the firm roots stretching deep and wide, totally out of sight beneath the surface.
So it's not just what you see day to day.
Not at all. It's about the unseen history. Resilience, shared struggles maybe, mutual support built over time. The deep extension of those roots is what provides the strength of its branches, gladly promising a secure future.
Wow. That's quite poetic, but it makes sense.
It really reinforces the idea that deep established connections built over time, forged through maybe shared challenges or just consistent mutual support, that's what provides long-term stability. Unwavering support, a solid foundation for your own growth, and importantly, mutual benefit within the organization.
It's the invisible network.
Exactly. The invisible network of trust and reciprocity that truly sustains the visible success, allows for future growth, future branches.
Okay, so let's look at a concrete example of this sourcing cult members or, building your core network in action.
Good idea. Ground it in reality.
Our source tells this anecdote about a friend and their director. This director used to host these regular informal parties, like maybe once every 3 months.
Okay, casual gatherings.
Yeah, but what was really interesting was the observation that 3 specific managers who had very little to do with the director's immediate department, not in their reporting line, they never missed these parties.
Never. Okay, that's a pattern.
Definitely a pattern. They just flowed easily through the gatherings, seemed to energize the conversations, were almost like family with the director. Very comfortable.
Yeah.
Then, one of these managers retired, and you know how it is. The stories started coming out.
The retirement party confessions.
Maybe. But it was then that the friend realized their bond wasn't new at all. It was formed years and years ago. These managers, along with the director, had essentially been plotting their way up the company together.
Plotting. Sounds a bit Machiavellian.
Well, maybe. Securing followers, laying the groundwork for their collective ascent. That's how the source puts it.
Okay, so this is a perfect real-world illustration of how that sourcing cult members, or maybe more accurately, building a powerful long-term network of aligned allies, actually plays out.
Yeah, it's not just theory.
Right. These weren't just casual buddies or people showing up for free drinks. These were long-term informal connections, maybe fueled by a shared ambition and, as the source playfully suggests, maybe a bit of alcohol helped.
Possibly.
But the key takeaway is the strategic nature of it. These early, sustained networking efforts, they cultivated this mutual support system over years.
Which allowed them
to fan out across the company, eventually heading various organs or major departments within this large conglomerate. It just demonstrates the immense, enduring power of identifying potential allies early on.
And actually nurturing those relationships.
Exactly. Fostering them for mutual gain, leveraging them strategically as everyone advances. It's about that shared history, that shared purpose, that mutual commitment that creates this powerful, unseen force within the organization.
Operating completely outside the formal channel.
Totally beyond the formal channels.
And the source gives another great, slightly different angle on leveraging connections. It focuses on someone who might seem like a less obvious source of influence.
Right.
It talks about the least successful member of that same director's quartet, that group of 4 who were always at the parties.
Least successful in what sense?
Yeah, like maybe didn't have the most stellar formal career path. They faced some health issues. But despite that, she held an envied role.
Envied? Why?
Largely because of her infectious, cheerful nature, but also, crucially, because she managed the department that handled employee access to discounts and charity items. Stuff people wanted.
Ah, the gatekeeper of the goodies.
Exactly. And the source notes that being her friend meant having insider details on upcoming deals. A significant advantage for her network.
Okay, so this highlights the incredibly practical, often overlooked side of building and using connections, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not always about grand strategy.
No, it's about, as the source says, taking advantage of connections, no rules broken. It's ethical, just smart.
Right.
This isn't about big strategic power plays every time. It's about the tangible, everyday benefits that come from genuine, reciprocal relationships. Knowing, for instance, that the Christmas gift items are becoming available in October.
That gives you a head start.
Absolutely. A competitive advantage. You can plan better, save money, get the desirable stuff others might miss out on. It just shows that meaningful connections aren't only for climbing the ladder or these big career plots.
They make daily life smoother, too.
Exactly. They foster practical, mutually beneficial exchanges that can make your work life, even your personal life, significantly easier, more informed, more rewarding. These seemingly informal relationships, maybe built just on trust and a positive attitude, can be incredibly valuable.
Offering access to info or resources others just don't get through the formal system.
Precisely.
So really, at its core, it just comes down to basic human nature, doesn't it?
Seems like it.
Our source emphasizes that human nature inherently depends on relationships, and that meaningful connections are a catalyst for reaching great heights.
Yeah, we're social creatures. We need connection.
So this idea of communities or clubs forming within the workplace feels incredibly natural, almost inevitable, really.
It absolutely does. And the source defines these communities or clubs quite clearly. It says, regular appearances of same faces all the times confirms that a community is in place.
Just seeing the same group hanging out together consistently.
Exactly. These consistent participants, they're often leaders of sorts within their informal group. They become the first point of contact for requests, challenges, even just sharing gossip or information within that specific circle.
And crucially,
these clubs have rules, both explicit and implicit. Being invited in means you qualify somehow, you fit the criteria, you understand the norms, even if they're unspoken.
and if you don't fit,
Well, if your values or behaviors are just too different from the group's established way of doing things, and you can't find a way to align, one of two things happen.
okay.
Either you consciously decide, nope, this isn't for me, and you reject the community, you move on. Or they subtly, or maybe not so subtly, kick you out through ostracism, exclusion, just not including you anymore.
Wow.
The source uses analogies like dating sites or hobby clubs. People naturally gravitate toward shared interests, shared values, and they align with the group norms there too. It's the same dynamic.
And in the workplace, the underlying goal, from the organization's perspective at least,
Right, the underlying agenda is hopefully to make these local connections, these global connections across departments, ultimately benefit the company by fostering links that lead to better collaboration, synergy, maybe even innovation. Not just personal gain, but organizational benefit too.
makes sense. So if every workplace has these hidden clubs, these informal networks, these layers of influence,
Right.
then really getting a handle on your people and the wider organizational culture becomes absolutely critical.
It's paramount. You can't navigate effectively if you don't understand the terrain.
Our source puts it very powerfully. Every workplace has a rhythm that everyone in the workplace dances to.
That's a great image, a rhythm.
Yeah, newcomers arrive and they quickly learn this rhythm, right? And the ingrained institutions, the old timers, they make sure that outsiders, or people who just don't quite get it, understand its beats, often through really subtle social cues.
And this rhythm, it's essentially the visible expression of a group's or department's underlying system of shared beliefs, values, and norms. That's what shapes behavior.
It's like a distinct way of life.
Exactly. Derived from similarities among the members, but also, importantly, from their differences compared to other clans or groups within the bigger organization.
So the smart player, what do they do?
The smart player, or maybe just the insightful manager, takes the time to identify these cultural cores and mores. What makes this group tick? What holds them together?
And these cores can be based on all sorts of things.
Oh yeah, a whole myriad of factors. Shared professional identity, maybe a common language or jargon, specific working styles, just psychological compatibility, or other, intangible values that cause people to cluster together in their little niches, forming these informal communities.
It's complex.
Very. We talk about workplace culture, like it's one single thing, but it's always subject to so many influences. External laws, regulations.
Internal company policies.
Right. The dynamics of different power groups, how conflicts are usually handled, even things like taste and personal styles of key individuals. It's this complex, multi-layer tapestry.
But it has discernible patterns.
Exactly. Patterns that ultimately dictate how things really operate, often much more powerfully than any official policy manual.
And you really see these cultural cores and the power of these unwritten rules playing out even in places you might not immediately think of.
Like where?
Well, the source shares this really vivid anecdote about resolving conflicts in a church.
A church. Okay, interesting setting for organizational dynamic.
Right, but it perfectly illustrates these points. The consultant observed that when conflicts came up, the power leaders loved to introduce themselves and their roles concerning how long they have been working in that church department.
Tenure is a source of authority.
Big time. There was this specific, memorable instance where a long-serving chorister basically shamed a younger one, told her she was too young to contribute.
Ouch. Just based on age or time in the choir?
Time in that specific choir.
Yeah.
The tenured singer had been performing there for 20 years, and that was the basis of her authority in that conflict.
Wow. So this is a profound example of how those informal rungs of leadership and that hierarchy through seniority by tenure can become deeply ingrained cultural norms.
Wielding immense power, even without any formal title difference.
Exactly. And it highlights that time spent outside that specific group, like maybe being a devout Christian for longer or having musical experience elsewhere. It just didn't count in that particular subculture.
Only tenure within that department mattered for authority.
Right. And while the source notes these individuals were often really good at what they did, superstars in their trades, producing valued results, their strict adherence to seniority meant they also became clogs in the form of change for increased efficiency.
Because they resisted new ideas from younger members.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Or just new ways of doing things. This anecdote really shows how internal cultural norms, even when they're not written down anywhere, can profoundly impact productivity, innovation, conflict resolution, just by creating resistance based on that's how we've always done it here, or you haven't been here long enough.
It's that old guard mentality in action.
Powerful, unyielding action sometimes.
So it's clearly not just about these informal, often unstated rules then, is it? It's more complex.
Definitely more complex.
Our source suggests it's about multiple layers of rules governing an organization. Some visible, some invisible, almost like that fish unaware of the water analogy.
Yeah, the water is all around dictating everything, but the fish might not consciously recognize all its elements or how deeply it shapes reality.
So what are those different layers? What should we be aware of?
That's a great question, because understanding these layers is key to grasping the complexity and power of culture. The source breaks it down into 4 distinct layers.
Okay, layer 1.
First, you have the external laws. These are the foundational rules from outside the organization. Think Constitution, federal laws, state laws, county regulations, stuff that protects citizens and governs even voluntary groups like churches or nonprofits.
The non-negotiables.
Exactly. The legal framework everyone has to operate within. Second, there are the organizational laws.
Company rules.
Right. The company-specific formal rules, usually handled by HR, often legally binding too, covering things like labor standards, health and safety protocols, anti-discrimination policies, codes of conduct.
It's the stuff in the employee handbook.
Typically, yeah.
Yeah.
But then layer 3, it gets more nuanced. The unwritten laws or norms.
Ah, the invisible rules.
Exactly. The ones everyone knows, but nobody ever wrote down. Think about, what time people actually go to lunch versus what the official policy might say.
Or whether it's okay to use a pencil versus a pen for certain notes. Or even what color ink is preferred for signatures, blue or black.
Little things like that. They might seem trivial, but they reflect deep-seated preferences or just historical ways of doing things. Like, the unwritten rule in many offices. Don't microwave fish in the communal kitchen.
Huh. Definitely an unwritten rule. No policy needed for that one.
Right. Everyone just understands the social consequences. These norms dictate so much daily behavior.
Okay, so external laws, organizational laws, unwritten norms. What's the 4th layer?
The 4th layer is privileges. These aren't really rules you follow, but they're ingrained benefits designed to attract, motivate, and keep talent.
Like perks.
Exactly. Perks. Benefits. Think comprehensive health care, good retirement plans, employee discounts on company products or services, While they aren't explicit rules, they define a huge part of the employee value proposition. They influence how people feel about their employer.
That's a lot to keep track of, all these visible and invisible currents.
For you, our listener, just thinking about these layers, external, organizational, unwritten privileges, what's one unwritten rule you've noticed in your own workplace, or maybe a social group that suddenly makes more sense through this lens?
That's exactly the practical point here. The smart manager, according to the source, doesn't just recognize these different norms exist. They strategically decide, do I just fit into the existing culture?
Right.
Or do I try to actively influence it, shape it for, higher productivity and profitability?
Influencing for results,
Yeah.
that gets attention.
That's the part that truly gains executive attention and respect. High-performance organizations, they get this. They know they need to attract, motivate, retain top talent, sure, but they also know they must be able to morph, to adapt their culture to survive and grow in a changing world.
So a manager might not create the deep norms, probably not single-handedly, but they absolutely must be aware of them as he plans his connections to set up his cult, or, less provocatively, as they plan to build their network of influence.
That awareness is the foundation.
It's the absolute foundation for any strategic move, any attempt to introduce change, any effort to lead effectively. Without it, you're just swimming against a powerful, unseen current, probably getting nowhere fast.
And within these cultural layers, there's also the language itself, right? The way people talk.
Oh, definitely. Language is huge.
Our source points out that every culture or its subdivision has a language. Groups develop their own codes, their own jargon that makes special meaning only to them. Maybe twisting common names for inside jokes.
Exactly. Shared references, acronyms nobody else understands,
Good.
build cohesion. The source gives a really fascinating, very subtle example from a large department store.
Okay.
It was noticed that some women working in one specific section consistently wore long pants, even in the middle of summer. Seemed odd, given the general store dress code allowed for other options.
Yeah, why would they do that?
Well, when someone asked their manager, the real reason came out. These particular employees frequently had to climb ladders to get items from high shelves for customers.
Okay,
And with the increasing prevalence of, illegal phone recordings and pictures, wearing pants was a discreet, totally unstated, local fashion arrangement among just those few employees.
to avoid potential exposure or feeling uncomfortable while climbing.
Exactly. To avoid any potential impropriety, perceived or real, this was a norm adopted by only 3 people in a huge company of thousands.
Wow, that's specific.
But it's a clear manifestation of a tiny subculture with its own values, its own practical solutions, its own shared understanding, totally distinct from the broader company rules. Like how pharmacists in the same store might wear white coats to signal their role, while sales associates wear company logos.
Different groups, different signals.
Right. Each small group devises its own way of operating that makes sense for its specific context. And the astute manager, the source concludes, doesn't need to understand every single little subtlety of every subculture.
That would be impossible.
Totally impossible. But they must acknowledge its existence, recognize it, respect it. That's the key to either fitting in effectively yourself or being able to respectfully and successfully influence that subculture later on.
It's about respecting those implicit agreements that make that group function and feel, comfortable and safe.
Precisely. You can't just barge in and dismiss them.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about the actual power dynamics within these informal cults or networks and how that plays into the realities of decision making, especially higher up.
Yeah, the intersection of culture and power. This is critical.
Our source makes it really clear. Every workplace has its power equations, and some people, it notes, just exhibit more political strength than their qualifications would otherwise suggest.
Ah, yes. The unofficial power brokers. We've all seen them, right?
Totally. It's not always the person with the fanciest title who actually holds the most sway.
Precisely. These individuals, the source describes them as belonging to an ecosystem where they exert so much influence that you wonder who the actual boss is.
You wonder who's really calling the shots.
Exactly. They might not be the official head, maybe not even high up on the formal chart, but they speak with the authority of the head.
Yeah.
And general advice, probably best not to cross them.
Because their opinions are backed up?
Usually, yeah. Often implicitly, by the real power structure. Sometimes these are authorities established for ad hoc purposes, like maybe a long-serving executive assistant who subtly directs things on certain projects.
Or a senior engineer whose technical knowledge gives them unofficial veto power over decisions?
Perfect examples.
Right.
And the astute manager, crucially, tries to understand these power relationships and intercultural relationships before they try to influence the business chemistry, before proposing big changes.
Why is that so important?
Because that understanding is key to preventing potential obstacles or resistance from these informal power groups. If they feel uncomfortable with your ideas, they can block you, subtly or overtly.
And understanding them helps you find allies too?
Yes. It's also how you identify significant partners. The people whose approval and favor are absolutely essential for anything significant you want to achieve. Getting buy-in from them is critical.
And if you don't get their buy-in?
Well, dissent from these influential people, even if it's just silent disapproval, like an eyebrow raise in a meeting, it can profoundly discourage others from supporting your proposal. People fear stigmatization or even possible punishment if they align with someone who's crossed an informal power broker.
So these informal powers.
They must be recognized and respected in cult building and maintenance, as the source puts it. They are the gatekeepers. They are the true arbiters of what actually gets done, regardless of what the official org chart says. You ignore them at your peril.
And it's not just about individuals wielding power, is it? These groups, especially maybe at the executive level, they also dramatically impact decision-making.
Oh, absolutely. Group dynamics are incredibly powerful.
Often in ways that seem to defy pure logic. Our source suggests that even though they might appear sociable, well-reasoned, rational, their subculture perspectives color their silo rationalities.
Silo rationalities, that's a great phrase.
Yeah, it paints this picture where the shared beliefs within a specific group can unconsciously, or maybe even consciously, override purely objective decision-making.
That's a critical insight. It really challenges that common idea that executive teams always make purely rational decisions based on all the available data.
Which they probably don't.
Rarely. The source explains that decision-making is commonly compromised by limitations in the capacity of individuals to process the information. We just can't absorb and perfectly analyze everything. Information overload is real.
And there are competing demands too, right?
Exactly. Competing demands from different parts of the organization, where each department or division is pushing for its own interests, its own resources.
So this is where groupthink comes in.
Precisely. This is where conformity and groupthink or cult psychology influence the local rationalities of individual players. Meaning that within their specific executive silo or cult, decisions often get unconsciously or sometimes consciously biased. Biased by the specific goals, the norms, the shared beliefs of that particular group, rather than reflecting a purely objective, organization-wide perspective.
I want to look good.
Always. To make the organization look excellent, both the internal group dynamics and external pressures work together to secure conformity. Which means, and this is pretty stark, it means that the cult reports data that fall within acceptable ranges to others in the organization, potentially overlooking unconscionable truths, downplaying inconvenient facts, just to maintain group harmony or project a positive image.
And our source provides a really concrete, almost startling example of this exact thing happening.
Okay, let's hear it.
It tells of a manager who manipulated company production data to protect group image.
Manipulated? How?
This manager would consistently skew the weekly production data for the smaller departments he oversaw. He'd insert or delete some imaginary figures into his formulas.
Why would he do that?
Because those smaller departments naturally had fewer hours of work, fewer resources. Their raw data, unadjusted, might look disproportionately low compared to the bigger departments, potentially making his overall numbers look weaker.
So he was smoothing the data to make his area look more consistent or productive.
Exactly. Now, the source notes the actual impact on the overall company conclusions was tiny. The values of these outliers were infinitesimal, but the practice itself.
Yeah, the practice is deeply problematic. It speaks volumes about the culture.
Totally. It suggests a culture where maintaining that positive appearance, even if it's subtly artificial, takes precedence over strict data integrity.
And how did this start?
Well, the source details how this manager first used this strategy to bail his boss out by fixing a previous error in a report that might have made their department look bad.
Okay, so he helped the boss once.
And then later he was called upon again by the same boss, specifically asked to manipulate the data to smooth out embarrassing information after an unexpected facility interruption messed up production numbers.
Wow. So the boss explicitly asked for manipulation.
Seems like it. And the manager, even though he felt uncomfortable with the ethics of it, felt he had no choice. He could not protest. The pressure from his superior, the implicit group pressure, was too strong.
That anecdote just perfectly illustrates how groups tend to foster conformity behavior by exerting pressure on the participants, even leading to subtle data fudging.
To present a more favorable, even if inaccurate, picture.
And the executives further up the chain. they might never realize their nice, smooth reports suffer from these kinds of defects. Because that internal pressure for conformity, for a positive external appearance, it just overrides true data integrity down the line.
It's like a quiet corruption of information happening beneath the surface.
A very quiet but potentially dangerous corruption.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting and maybe, a bit darker. This leads us to the deeper, more dangerous side of these group dynamics, especially within powerful, informal cults.
The downsides of groupthink.
Right. Groups often feel comfortable with biased or manipulated data, as we just saw, and maybe surprisingly, they frequently have little time to review options thoroughly before making big decisions.
Yeah, the pressure to decide quickly to move on can be immense.
And the consequences of this can be really far-reaching, right? And damaging.
Absolutely detrimental to an organization's long-term health. Firstly, the source points out, adventurism is discouraged.
Meaning innovation gets stifled.
Pretty much. Yeah. Any idea that deviates too far from the group's established norms, the accepted wisdom, it just gets dismissed quickly. Maybe laughed off, maybe subtly undermined. It stifles creativity and necessary risk-taking.
Okay, what else?
Secondly, once a problem is seemingly solved, these groups rarely spend the time to prevent or manage a future occurrence through contingency planning.
They just move on.
Yeah, there's this false sense of closure, a belief that the problem is fixed, done, won't happen again. No need to plan for what if.
And outsiders might mistake this for efficiency.
Exactly. Outsiders often mistake that strength in group unanimity for superior efficiency or deep insight, when really this drift-along behavior, just going with the flow to build consensus, it subtly weakens any individual's potential to voice contrary opinion within the cult.
Because rocking the boat is risky.
Very risky. Dissent, as the source bluntly states, breeds suspicion. It makes it incredibly dangerous, career-wise, for anyone to really challenge the prevailing groupthink.
And this leads to a particularly powerful and potentially dangerous psychological state.
Which is?
Cults feel invulnerable, and this powers their optimism.
The feeling of invincibility. Yes, that's a classic groupthink symptom. Nurtured by the group's internal echo chamber, reinforced by that perceived unanimity, it inspires the group's readiness for risk-taking, often excessive risk-taking.
The source uses an interesting contrast here.
Yeah.
Between an open organization, like the police who displays its arms, suggesting overt acknowledged power, and maybe a secret investigative unit that influences policy through less visible means, like controlling information flow.
Okay, different styles of power.
Right.
But in both scenarios, whether the power is out in the open or hidden, the cult members' feeling of invincibility emboldens members to trust cult leadership directives and to follow them, believing that the leaders know what they're doing.
Blind trust, almost.
Indeed. Members easily start to discount undercurrents and warnings or threats as irrational. They dismiss concerns with those classic phrases like, oh, it's just not the way things work around here, or that could never happen to us.
And the trust in the group overrides personal judgment.
It really can. The trust in group morality overrides personal threats to individual morality and ethics. People might do things as part of the group they'd never do alone. And while there might be internal discipline for breaking group rules, the group frowns very strongly against external accusations of its members.
Creating an insulated bubble.
Totally. An echo chamber. Members learn to enforce self-censorship to avoid direct pressure or confrontation. Because the sense of unanimity is healthy, even if it is an illusion, maintaining that feeling of agreement becomes paramount.
And ultimately,
they interpret silence to signify consent. If nobody speaks up against an idea, it's assumed everyone agrees. This cements the group's collective direction, even if it's deeply flawed.
which can lead to disastrous long-term consequences.
Absolutely. It's a pertinent reminder that even really smart, capable people can be swayed by group dynamics into making decisions that, looking back, seem totally irrational or unethical.
Wow. Okay, so wrapping this all up, what does this mean for you, our listener? We've taken a really deep dive today into these hidden layers of organizational life.
A lot to think about.
Definitely. From how profoundly a boss influences their department's culture, right down to the subtle but incredibly powerful ways these informal cults or core groups form, how they gather influence.
And how they even impact executive decision-making, sometimes really undermining rationality and ethics.
We've seen how understanding these complex dynamics, the unspoken rules, the informal leaders who really pull the strings, the shared histories that bind people, the psychological traps of groupthink, how crucial all that is.
Crucial for navigating your own path, for building meaningful connections, and ultimately for actually making a significant impact in whatever organization you're part of.
Yeah, the source material truly underscores that success isn't just about what's on your resume or strictly following the official org chart.
No, it's much more about being deeply attuned to that intricate web of relationships, those cultural currents flowing beneath the surface, being aware of the real rhythm of the place.
The unstated agreements, the true centers of influence.
All of that.
Absolutely. It's a powerful reminder to just pay attention to those nuances, to observe, listen, and try to understand the unwritten rules that truly govern your professional world. Now, for you, our listener, here's a provocative thought to maybe mull over as you go about your week. Think about your own workplace, or maybe even a social group you belong to, a community organization, a sports team, a hobby club, whatever.
Okay.
What's one unwritten rule that you've observed? Something seemingly small, maybe, that everyone just knows you should or shouldn't do, even though it's never been explicitly stated.
Find one of those invisible rules.
Exactly. And then ask yourself, what does the existence of that specific rule tell you about the underlying values, or the history, or the cult, or faction that maintains it?
What does it reveal about the group?
Yeah. And then the final step. How might understanding that specific rule change how you approach your interactions next week? How you build your own connections? Or even how you might frame a new idea you want to propose?
How can that awareness change your actions?
Yeah.
A great question to leave people with.